Welcome to CDL Training. Today we're going to be doing the pre-trip inspection for Class A for the state of Maryland. In this video you will find everything you need to inspect and do while doing your pre-trip inspection in order to pass your pre-trip inspection test. First, I will tell the examiner I have the keys in my possession. I have full control of the vehicle. Next, the wheels are chalked. The vehicle will not move without my authorization. They're chalked on the second axle on the passenger side. Next, I will check under the vehicle for any leaks. No transmission oil leaks, engine oil leaks, coolant, power steering fluid, or fuel leaks. If you see any leaks underneath the vehicle, you have to check what it is and where it's coming from. Next, you will make sure the tractor and trailer are not leaning. If they were leaning, that would mean we have a suspension problem or a problem with one of the tires. Next, you would check the passenger side, driver's side, front of the vehicle, and rear of the vehicle for any obstructions, like tree branches or cables. Make sure there's no tree branches or cables around the vehicle, no obstructions. Next, you will check the exhaust system. Make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, no missing clamps, and no signs of soot. Soot will indicate a crack or a leak. Next, you will check the fuel tank. Make sure the fuel tank is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, not leaking. Make sure it's properly strapped. No rust or shiny metal around the straps that will indicate that it's loose. Next, you'll check the cap. Make sure it's secured, no leaks around. The gasket inside is not excessively worn. Then you will check the fuel line. Make sure it's properly mounted and connected, not cut or leaking, and not missing any clamps. Next, you would invite the examiner inside of the cab to do an in-cab inspection and air brake test. Once you're in the cab, you're going to turn the vehicle on to build up air pressure for your air brake test. Turn the key to the on position, give yourself 3 to 5 seconds, and then you will turn the engine on. We're going to make sure we reach 120 psi for the air brake test. We have reached 120 psi. We are ready for the air brake test. We're going to go ahead and turn the engine off, but leave the key on the on position. Then we're going to release our parking brakes. The vehicle will not move because the wheels are chalked. Next, you will hold the brake pedal down for exactly 60 seconds to make sure you do not lose more than 4 psi. You can time yourself, or you can ask the examiner doing the test to time you. And we're going to start the 60 seconds now. Make sure you check your needle. The needle's not moving. That means you do not have an air leak in the system. 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60 seconds. We did not lose more than 4 psi within 1 minute. Next, you're going to pump the brake down to 60 psi to make sure the warning light and the buzzer are working properly. The warning light and the buzzer are working properly. Next, we're going to continue to pump the brake down to 20 and 40 psi and make sure the parking brakes pop out. Parking brakes popped out. They are working properly. Next, you will turn the engine back on to regain air pressure. While the air pressure rises, you're going to go ahead and do an in-cab inspection. First, you're going to check the air horn. Then you will check your city horn. Then you will check your seat and your seat belt. Make sure the seat belt clicks and unclicks and there's no excessive damage on the belt. Next, you will check the gauges. The water temperature gauge, make sure it's between 180 and 220. If it's over 220, the engine is overheating. The oil pressure gauge, make sure it's between 30 and 60 psi. Your volt gauge should be between 12 and 14 volts. Your air pressure gauges should be between 100 and 120 psi. Next, you will check the lights on the panel. Left turn signal is working good. Right turn signal is working good. Your four-way flashers are working good. Your high beams working good. And your low beams are working good. Next, you will check your windshield wiper and washer. It's right here. Make sure you press and hold. Make sure your windshield wipers are working properly. Next, you will check your mirrors. Make sure all mirrors are properly adjusted to meet the driver. Next, you will check the 3 emergency equipment. First, you will check the ABC fire extinguishers properly mounted and properly charged. Next, you will check your spare fuses. They are in the door pocket on the driver's side door. And then you will check the 3 emergency triangles, which are inside this red box right here, under the passenger seat. Next, you would check the gear selector. You would put your foot inside the clutch and go through your gears. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. You would go into high gears. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th gear. Make sure you go back to neutral and also check your reverse. All the way left and up. Reverse. Your gear selector is working good. Next, our air pressure is back up to 120 psi. The air brake system is working good. The air pressure is working good. Next, you will do a parking brake test. You will test the tractor parking brake and the trailer parking brake. Next, you will set the vehicle in first gear. You will release the trailer brake. We will check our tractor brake. We're going to go ahead and put it in first, give it some gas. The vehicle is not moving. Next, you will apply the trailer brake, release the tractor brake. Leave it in first, give it some gas. The vehicle is holding, it's not moving. Next, you will simulate a service brake check. What you would do is let the vehicle go at about 5 miles per hour and step on the pedal brake. Make sure the vehicle does not move to the left or right. That means the service brake is working properly. Next, we're going to go outside and do the remaining of the pre-trip inspection. On the way out of the truck, do not forget to take the keys with you. You will check your handlebars, outside and inside. They're both properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent or broken, no illegal weldings. Next, you will check your steps. The steps are properly mounted, properly bolted, not excessively damaged. There's no obstructions on the steps. Next, you will check the trailer clearance lights. There's 2 of them in the front. They're properly mounted, properly bolted, Proper color is amber, not cracked and not broken. Next, you would check the 5 tractor clearance lights on top of the tractor. They're properly mounted, properly bolted. Proper color is amber, not cracked, not broken. Next, you would check the driver's side mirror. Make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken. The metal bracket is not cracked or broken. You would check the one on the passenger side the same way. Make sure it's properly mounted and bolted, not cracked or broken. The metal is not cracked or broken. Next, we'll check the windshield. The windshield is properly mounted and bolted, not cracked or broken. No illegal stickers. Only stickers allowed are inspection stickers if required by the state. The windshield seal, make sure it's properly sealed around the windshield. No leaks or water going inside of the cab. The windshield wipers, they're both properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken. The blades are not excessively worn. Then you would check the lights. The left turn signals and right turn signals are properly mounted and bolted. Proper color is amber, they're not cracked, not broken. The high and low beam headlights are properly mounted and bolted. Proper color is clear, not cracked, not broken, no condensation inside. The front license plate, make sure it's properly mounted and bolted. The dates are not expired. The front tag will never match the trailer tag. Next, we will move on to the engine compartment. We will unlatch both sides and we will open the engine compartment. The engine compartment is open. Now we're going to go ahead and check the passenger side first. The first thing we check on the passenger side is the radiator. The radiator is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, and not leaking. The radiator fan blades are properly mounted, properly bolted, no missing blades, not excessively damaged, not cracked, bent, or broken. The radiator main hose is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken, no missing clamps, and not leaking. Next, we check the radiator reservoir, which is on top of the radiator. Make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, not broken, not leaking. Check the proper level through the sight glass. Then you would check the cap, make sure it's secure, no leaks around, the gasket inside is not excessively damaged, and the hoses are properly mounted and connected, not cut or leaking, and not missing any clamps. The first part you will check on the driver's side is the air compressor. The air compressor is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, not broken, not leaking. It is gear driven, that's why we check for leaks. We're going to check the air compressor hoses. The hoses are properly mounted and connected, not cut or leaking, and not missing any clamps. Behind the air compressor is the power steering pump. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it. Make sure it's properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, not broken, not leaking. It is also gear driven, that's why you check for leaks. Next, you will check the alternator. The alternator is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, not broken. The alternator is belt driven. This is the belt. Make sure there's no more than 3/4 inches of slack on the belt, no excessive damage on the belt. The alternator has a red wire. Make sure it's properly connected, not cut, burnt, or frayed. Next, you will check the water pump, which is down here. The water pump is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, not broken, not leaking. It is also belt driven. You're going to check for proper belt tension. No more than 3/4 inches of slack on the belt. No excessive damage on the belt. Next, you will check the power steering reservoir. Make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, not leaking. Check the sight glass right here for proper level. Make sure it has proper level. The cap is secure, no leaks around. The gasket inside is not excessively worn. Check the hose. It's properly connected, not cut or leaking, not missing any clamps. Next, you check the engine oil dipstick. The engine oil dipstick is right here. You're gonna take it out, clean it, put it back in, take it out again, check for proper level, and we're gonna put it back in. If we need to add any oil, we will add it through here. Next, we're gonna start by checking the steering system. This is the steering shaft. Make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, properly greased. Not cracked, bent, or broken. No illegal welds on it. The steering gearbox right here is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, and not leaking. The steering gearbox hoses are properly mounted and properly connected, not cut or leaking, and not missing any clamps. Next, we'll check the steering linkage. We have 5 parts to the steering linkage. First, the pitman arm, properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal weldings. Next is the drag link. It's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal weldings. Next is the ball joint. Properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, no missing cutter key. The steering arm, make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, no illegal welds on it. And the tie rod down here goes from side to side. It's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. Next, we check the suspension system. We have 5 parts to the suspension system. First, the front spring hanger is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. The leaf springs, properly mounted, properly bolted, none are missing, none are shifted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. Next is the U-bolts, properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it, no missing nuts under. Next is the shock absorber, properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, not broken, and not leaking. Next is the rear spring hanger. It's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, and no illegal welds on it. Next, we check the air brake system. First is the air hose, properly mounted, properly connected, no cuts, no leaks, not missing clamps. Next is the air chamber. It's properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken, and not leaking. Next is the slack adjusters, properly mounted, properly bolted, no more than 1 inch of slack. We check by pushing or pulling on the push rod. The cutter pin and the cutter key are in place. Next, we'll check inside for the brake drum. The brake drum is properly mounted, properly bolted, no grease or oil around, no illegal welds on it. The brake linings, which are at the bottom, we would check for proper thickness, proper level. Next, we check the front tires. The front tires cannot be recapped or regrouped or mismatched. No less than 4/32 inch tread depth on the main grooves. We'll check both sides of the tires for no cuts and no bulges. Next, we'll check the proper air pressure with an air gauge through the air valve. The air valve is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked or broken, and not leaking. The cap is on. The rim is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, and no illegal welds on it. The lug nuts, none are missing, none are loose. No rust or shiny metal around the lug nuts that will indicate that they are loose. The inner and outer oil seals are inside. They're properly mounted, not cracked, broken, or leaking. The hub oil seal is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken, not leaking. Check the sight glass for proper level. Next, I will check the swing clearance between the tractor and the trailer. Make sure you have enough clearance for when you make turns. Next, you will check the tractor side lines and the trailer side lines. On the tractor side, you have the electric line. It's properly mounted and connected, not cut, burnt, or frayed. Next, you will check the red emergency and blue service line. They're both properly mounted and connected, not cut, not leaking. Next, you will check the trailer side. Make sure the electric line is properly connected, it's not cut, burnt, or frayed. Check the red emergency and blue service line. Make sure they're properly mounted and connected, not cut or leaking. They connect to the trailer by the glad hands. The glad hands are properly connected. No leaks around. The gasket inside is not excessively worn. Next, you will check the front of the trailer, the headboard. Make sure it's properly mounted. There's no excessive damage on the front of the trailer. Next, we will check the drive shaft. The drive shaft is properly mounted, properly bolted, properly greased. Not cracked, bent, or broken. No illegal weldings and no debris or obstructions around it. Next, we will check the side of the trailer and make sure there's no excessive damage on the side of the trailer. Next, we'll check the DOT reflective tape. Make sure at least half of the trailer has DOT reflective tape. Next, we will check the fifth wheel. The fifth wheel is properly mounted and properly bolted to the tractor platform. Make sure it's properly greased. No gap when it's connected. The locking pins in place. The release arm and the safety pin inside are engaged. The trailer apron, no excessive damage because it can damage the fifth wheel. The kingpin is properly mounted and bolted to the trailer apron. The locking jaws are secured around the kingpin. The trailer cross members are properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal weldings, and none are missing. Next, we will check the rear tractor lights. The brake lights, properly mounted, properly bolted, proper colors red, not cracked or broken. These are also turn signals. The reverse light, properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken. The proper color is white. Next, you will check the suspension system and the second axle. First, the front spring hanger is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. Next, you will check the leaf springs, properly mounted and bolted, none are missing, none are shifted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. The U-bolts inside are properly mounted and bolted, no missing nuts under, not cracked, not broken. This is your torque rod, properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. Behind the tires, you have the shock absorber. It's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, broken, or leaking. It has hydraulic fluid. That's why we check for leaks. Next, we check the airbag or air bellow. It's properly mounted, properly bolted, no cuts, and no leaks. Next, you will check the air brake system in the second axle. You can't really see it here, but you're going to check the air hose is properly mounted and properly connected. No cuts, no leaks. The air chamber is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken, and not leaking. The slack adjuster towards the rear is properly mounted, properly bolted, no more than 1 inch of slack. We check by pushing or pulling on the push rod. The cutter pin and the cutter key are in place, and the brakes have to be released in order to check it. The brake drums inside are properly mounted and properly bolted. No grease or oil around and no illegal welds on it. The brake linings inside towards the bottom are properly mounted and properly bolted. We check for proper thickness and proper level. Next, you check the second axle tires. These are called butt tires. Nothing in between the tires. They are not touching. These tires can be recapped or regrooved. no less than 2/32 inch tread depth on the main grooves. Check all sides of the tires for no cuts and no bulges. Check the proper air pressure with an air gauge through the air valve. Air valve is properly mounted and properly bolted, no cuts or leaks. The cap is on. The rim is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. The lug nuts, none are missing, none are loose, no rust or shiny metal around, that means they are loose. The inner and outer oil seal are inside, properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, not broken, and not leaking. The axle seal is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken, not leaking. The mud flap is properly mounted, properly bolted, no excessive damage, and is in place. The landing gear is properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, not broken. It goes up and down, is in the raised position, and the handlebar that controls the landing gear is secured. The tractor frame goes from the front of the tractor all the way to the rear of the tractor. Make sure it's properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, and there's no illegal welds on it. The trailer frame is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. Next, we check the suspension system in the third axle. First is the front spring hanger and the rear spring hanger, which is in the rear. It's properly mounted and properly bolted. Not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. The leaf springs, properly mounted and properly bolted. None are missing, none are shifted. Not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it. The U-bolts, properly mounted and properly bolted. Not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds on it, and no missing nuts on the bottom. The torsion bar is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, and no illegal welds on it. Next, we will check the air brake system in the third axle. First, the air hoses are properly mounted and properly connected, no cuts, no leaks. The air chamber is properly mounted and properly bolted, not cracked or broken, not leaking. The slack adjuster over here on the other side is properly mounted, properly bolted, no more than 1 inch of slack. We check by pushing or pulling on the push rod. The cutter pin and the cutter key are in place. The brakes have to be released in order to check it. The brake drums inside here are properly mounted, properly bolted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no grease or oil around, no illegal weldings. The brake linings, we would check for proper thickness, proper level. Make sure it's properly mounted and bolted, the dates are not expired. The license plate in the rear will never match the front license plate. Next, we check the lights, the left turn signal, right turn signal, properly mounted and bolted, proper colors amber, not cracked or broken. The brake lights and reflector lights, properly mounted and bolted, proper colors red, not cracked or broken. Also make sure the door opens and closes properly. Next, you will tell the examiner you will check everything on the passenger side of the tractor trailer the same way you checked on the driver's side. Then you would go to the front, close the hood of the engine, and that would complete your pre-trip inspection. Good luck on your test.